Hey, what's up guys? Today I'll show you a zombie horror film, The Return of the Living Dead Part 1. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. The movie begins with a text telling us we are about to witness true events based on real people and real organizations. Then we move to July 1984, where we see some men inside a medical store warehouse. They consist of a young man named Freddy, his warehouse manager, and their senior named Boss. The men are preparing for the 4th of July celebrations, and the boss leaves after wishing the other men best of luck with their work. Now, manager tells Freddy to prepare a couple of skeletons to be shipped to a medical school because an order has arrived for them. The medical school needs one male and one female skeleton, so manager explains to Freddy how he should be sorting out the skeletons and laying them down inside the storage boxes for delivery. In the middle of this lecture, Freddy is amazed to learn that most of the skeletons come from India, but manager is even more interested in learning how so many skeletons are found with the perfect set of teeth. Now manager shows Freddy the rest of the warehouse, which also includes cadavers used for medical schools and even the US military. After his tutorial, Freddy is taken to a freezing room where he sees a fresh corpse hanging like a piece of beef. He is visibly scared to see the dead body, but walks out of the room to avoid puking from the sight. Meanwhile, Freddy's friends walk around town like a bunch of goons and decide to hit him up for some fun. The friends include Freddy's girlfriend, Babe, a jerk named Bully, his twinning buddy, a goth girl, and a nerd couple. Now Freddy and manager sit down for work, but also talk about all the weird things they've seen in their lives. That's when manager mentions a zombie movie named The Night of the Living Dead. He explains that the movie was actually based on a true story, but had to change the facts in order to avoid a legal lawsuit from the US military. Manager proceeds to talk about a toxic chemical named trioxin, which is capable of turning people into zombies. Apparently, there was a mishap at the military facility where the toxic trioxin was being kept, and it led to a spillage, which leaked out and sparked off the zombie apocalypse as per the true events. Freddy is amazed to hear the story, but doesn't believe it because he suspects his manager of feeding him smelly bullshit. However, manager explains that he was in the transportation and logistics department of the army, so he knows the truth about the zombies. He even goes on to claim that he has transported some of the infected zombie bodies to this very warehouse. This spooks out Freddy, but the men get interrupted by a phone call, which simply turns out to be manager's wife. After a brief chat, manager takes Freddy downstairs to show him one of the infected corpses. They avoid a broken step on their way and reach the basement, where there is a military barrel filled with a frozen body, which is supposed to be a zombie. Freddy cannot believe his eyes and asks manager if the zombie inside the barrel is actually alive. Luckily, manager reassures Freddy that this is military-grade equipment, so there's nothing to worry about. However, when he smacks the barrel to establish dominance, it starts to spill toxic gas and knocks out both the men with its stinky fumes. This also leads to the frozen zombie thawing, hinting that it's going to awaken soon. The toxic gas spills everywhere, and it also reaches the hanging corpse, which seemingly starts to move after inhaling the fumes. The shot then transitions to the American flag, and then we see a luxury car entering a giant mansion. A colonel enters his home and meets his wife, who asks him how his day was. He doesn't look very happy and asks what's for dinner. After learning that there are lamb chops, the colonel gets upset and goes to his room. Here, he checks in with his work colleagues through his communication device. The colonel then talks to his wife, and they have an argument regarding his communication device. It's hinted that the colonel is hiding a secret, which he doesn't reveal for now. Later, we see Freddy's friends in Bully's car riding towards him so that they can have some fun together. Babe defends Freddy's habits, but Bully simply calls him a loser for having a job and being a responsible citizen. The friends reach the medical warehouse, but have to wait for another 2 hours till Freddy's shift gets over, so they go to the graveyard nearby to have some fun. While they wreak havoc inside the graveyard, we see Freddy and his manager, both of whom finally wake up from their slumber. Their noses are still stinging from the fumes, and then Freddy notices that the body in the barrel is missing. Manager remains calm and assumes that the body might have melted. But when the men go back upstairs, they hear a dog barking. After some looking around, they find a dog statue, which is sliced in half, but has somehow become alive. This creeps out manager, so he angrily smashes the zombie dog in a state of panic. After that, the hanging corpse becomes a zombie and starts attacking a sealed door, making Freddy cluck like a scared chicken. It turns out that the toxic gas has made everything alive, even non-sentient items, thus proving that it is indeed trioxin. Freddy wants to call the cops, but manager doesn't want any legal trouble, so he decides to call boss instead. Meanwhile, Goth Girl entertains the team by exposing her body smell while fantasizing about death. She undresses and reveals her naked body, thus giving everyone a free show. Now boss learns about what just happened and decides to get rid of the zombie evidence. For starters, the men need to handle the hanging zombie banging the door, so boss makes a plan to kill it. As per the movie mentioned by manager earlier, killing the zombie through the head seems to be the best way, so the men act accordingly. However, after freeing the hanging zombie who's not hanging anymore, boss gets attacked and struggles to break free. The hanging zombie is tough and even survives a blow to the head. This is a bit too confusing for the men as they restrain the hanging zombie, but boss figures they should just use sulfuric acid to get the job done. Now, Goth Girl unleashes her hormones on Bully, hoping to get laid, but he sends her sexy body away because he wants to respect the dead. Meanwhile, the nerd couple spots someone in the grave, and they think if it's Freddy, but reason that he has no business being in a graveyard right now. However, their suspicions are true, as we see Boss meeting a doctor who's working on a dead body. They share a chat reminiscing about old times, but then Boss cuts to the chase and reveals his true bossy colors. He wants a favor from Doctor, who agrees to help, so Boss brings Freddy and Manager inside the room. They have chopped up bags with them, and it confuses Doctor, but the men say these are wild weasels. After a bit of back and forth, Doctor calls out Boss's bullshit and finally learns the truth. The men unleash one of the zombies' arms from the bags, and it attacks Doctor, much to his shock and disgust. He gets saved from the arm, and then Boss asks him for help in getting rid of the chopped-up zombie. Then, we see the nerd couple discussing a potential session of hormone yoga, but Babe wants Freddy, so she ignores the others and goes looking for him in the medical warehouse. Doctor asks Boss for some payment in exchange for his services, and they eventually agree to use the incinerator to burn down the zombie statue. Doctor gets to work and burns the zombie pieces without mercy, while also telling Boss he owes him big time. However, upon getting burned, the zombie fumes go up into the sky, and then it starts to rain. The zombie smoke makes the rain acidic, and it torments Freddy's friends. They go back inside the car, hoping that the car is zombie-proof, but Goth Girl worries about what's currently on her naked skin. The worst part is that the rain makes something happen to all the bodies buried in the graveyard. After the burning is complete, Freddy reveals that the trioxin from the barrel made him and Manager sick, so Doctor suggests getting some paramedics for assistance. Manager loses his mind and starts coughing violently, so Doctor calls for medical help. Meanwhile, the zombie rain awakens the zombie graves, and Goth Girl continues to panic because the rain is leaking into the car. Now Babe looks for Freddy in the medical warehouse, but comes across the zombie that went missing from the barrel. She runs her sexy body up the stairs, but falls through the broken step and has to lock herself inside a closet because the barrel zombie wants her brains, but not her sexy body. A tense sequence follows as the barrel zombie exhibits intelligence while using a chain to break open the closet. Bully and the team reach the scene after listening to Babe's chicken screams, and they find the barrel zombie inside the basement. The barrel zombie attacks Bully and eats his brains, so the others run their shitty lives away along with Babe and lock themselves out of the basement. Then, we see Freddy and his manager being treated by a couple of paramedics who come to check them out. Here, they learn that their body temperatures have gone significantly lower, and on top of that, they have no blood pressure or pulse either. This is a bit of a shock for Freddy, so he begins to panic like a goose with goosebumps, just like Babe and the others who make a quick escape, hoping to avoid the barrel zombie. Unfortunately, they get stuck in the rain and are attacked by more zombies. Babe and the others run away from the zombies, but Goth Girl gets abandoned and is eaten without mercy. Freddy is told that he's technically supposed to be dead, but is also conscious. So this is an anomaly of science. Babe and the two of them reach Doctor's home and ask for help, so the paramedics go out to call for support. However, they are attacked and eaten by zombies, after which we see the nerdy couple taking refuge inside the medical warehouse. Babe finds Freddy and smothers him with tongue massages, but is shocked to see his state, as if he's part of a sick experiment. Doctor goes out to look for the paramedics, but finds them getting chewed on by the zombies. He shoots one of them, but it's of no use, so he rushes back home. The team gets together and decides to call the cops. But then, a zombie goes to the ambulance and radios for more paramedics. Boss explains that this is all because of the zombie fumes leaked by Freddy and his manager, and then Doctor notices that Freddy is about to die, which means he'll mostly become a zombie. Some more paramedics arrive, but they are quickly eaten by the zombies in front of the team. The zombies then break through the house. After a brief muscle wrestling, a zombie lady kills the twinning buddy, not wanting to make a zombie baby with him. Doctor and the others manage to seal the house and tie up the lady zombie so that they can learn more about her zombified but still sexy body. The lady zombie explains that she and the other zombies only eat brains, not smelly parts, because it makes the pain of being dead go away. Meanwhile, Goth Girl turns into a goth zombie and attacks an innocent man passing by. The cops get involved because of a zombie radio alert and send the car to investigate the scene. Doctor and the others put Freddy and Manager inside a chapel room because they don't want them around when they become zombies. Babe decides to stay with Freddy because of her undying love for him. But things only get worse when the cops arrive and are attacked by the zombies, thus falling into the trap. Hope seems to be running out, but Doctor notices that he has some nitric acid, which can be used as a weapon. Now Freddy turns into a zombie, traces Babe's smelly hormones, and attacks her without mercy, while Manager also completes his transformation. Doctor and the others come to the rescue with the nitric acid and blind zombie Freddy. But they don't seem to notice zombie Manager escaping in the background. Zombie Freddy breaks free, so one option is to hide in the attic, but Boss decides to go to the police car instead. He avoids the zombies and tries to help the others, but there are too many zombies, so they make a run for it. Unfortunately, there's a zombie apocalypse in effect, so the men drive in a different direction and bump into the nerd couple at the medical warehouse. Meanwhile, Zombie Manager burns his body in the incinerator because he can't take more of the pain. The zombies continue to terrorize the city and even kill the cops coming toward them. Doctor and Babe hide in the attic while Zombie Freddy taunts them, hoping to get a bite of Babe's brains. Boss and the others decide to call the cops for help, and they lure out the barrel zombie so that they can access the phone in the basement. The team knocks out the zombie's head and rushes to the phone to call for help. However, the cops are ambushed by the zombie invasion and get defeated with ease. Realizing what has happened, Boss tries his last resort and contacts the Colonel through an operator. It turns out that the Colonel already anticipated something like this because he talks to his team by calling the zombies eggs, which have now hatched. This is the secret he was hiding from his wife earlier. The Colonel carries out a nuclear strike by contacting another soldier and giving him the necessary codes. The soldier fires the bomb at the target city at the exact same moment Zombie Freddy breaks through the ceiling. The Colonel then talks to his superior and tells him the matter is closed because all that remains is burning skin, which will be washed away by the rain. However, we are shown the earlier footage of a skeleton zombie awakening from the zombie rain, so it is left to our imagination to wonder if humanity will face the same fate again. The Return of the Living Dead, Part 2. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. The movie begins with the shot of a jeep rushing through the pouring rain. A soldier steps out of the jeep and signals to the other soldiers that the coast is clear. That's when we see an entire army of trucks arriving with barrels inside them. These barrels are filled with a mysterious substance, which is the property of the US Army. Now, one of the drivers listens to music and smokes a cigarette while the convoy crosses a bridge. However, one of the barrels falls from the truck after it hits a bump, and then it starts to leak, hinting at something ominous. Now we move to the daytime, where a little boy named Jesse looks out of his home and notices his bully seated downstairs with another friend. Jesse gets some magazines and gives them to the bully, who decides to give him an induction in his clubhouse. Jesse isn't keen on seeing the clubhouse, but is taken there anyway. As the group heads to the clubhouse, they cross a graveyard that makes Jesse nervous. He decides not to go to the clubhouse after seeing it, but the bully decides to perform the induction ceremony. A tense chase follows, but Jesse is caught by the bully and his friend, who find him inside a drain. A brief struggle follows, but then the boys find the same barrel that was dropped by the army earlier. They explore the barrel, but notice a rotting zombie inside it, so they run away like chickens. Jesse wants to report this to the army, but he gets trapped inside a secret room by the bully. Then we see a man named Joey, who is on a skull-stealing mission with an old man named Goldie and his sexy girlfriend, Babe. She doesn't want Joey to go out on his mission with Oldie, but he decides to ignore her after a brief tongue massage. It turns out that Oldie has been hired to dig out skulls for his clients, and he's ready to do as he's told. Joey suggests giving fake skulls, but Oldie doesn't want to play dirty. Meanwhile, Jesse explores the room for a bit, but then he bumps into a decaying corpse. He gets creeped out by the corpse, especially when it moves its face, but Joey and Oldie arrive and scare the shit out of him. Jesse makes it out alive and finds his sister at home who's doing a smelly workout, probably for a hormone season later. Meanwhile, the bully and his friend break open the zombie barrel because they want to explore it, but accidentally trigger the release of a zombie gas. The zombie gas starts to spread everywhere, suggesting something horrible, and it moves into the secret room, where Oldie and Joey find an old corpse. Oldie teases Joey and even tempts him with some jewelry that he can give to Babe, but Joey gets creeped out when he sees the zombie gas. Oldie doesn't think much of it, so he decides to go ahead with his skull robbery. Then, Jesse checks out a comic book of his favorite superhero and thinks about becoming a hero himself. He looks outside and finds the bully running to his home, after which we see some soldiers lamenting the missing barrel, as this incident has already happened before. Now, a repairman comes along to Jesse's house and is amazed to see how gorgeous his sister is. The repairman thinks that he can act out a dirty fantasy, so the repairman plays around with the sister, hoping to fix her hormones. But she shoots him down because of his smelly face. Jesse has to do homework, but he goes to meet the bully, who is now sick. The bully's mom acts tough at first, but eventually she allows Jesse to go meet him. Jesse is amazed to see the bully in such bad shape, as he looks almost as if he is turning into a zombie. Jesse wants more information, but the bully's mom shows up and asks him to get lost after checking the thermometer. At night, Jesse wears a dummy hazmat suit and checks out the zombie barrel, but he comes across a smelly zombie. He is scared by the zombie, who only wants to eat his brains, not his smelly part. Jesse takes cover and manages to push the zombie into a pool of water. But as he makes his escape, he finds more zombies coming out of the ground. This leads to a chaotic sequence, where multiple zombies come out of the ground and give us a haunting but somewhat hilarious sequence. Now, Babe decides to check up on him as the zombie apocalypse comes into effect. Meanwhile, Joey gets scolded by Oldie, who thinks he's doing a lousy job. Babe runs into a zombie and thinks he wants her car, so she bargains with him, but gets attacked by another zombie. She punches him to establish dominance, but only gets goo all over her hands. Babe runs for shelter to cover her sexy body, and then we see a zombie waking up next to Oldie. It leads to a sense of panic, and Joey tries slashing the zombie's head, but it's of no use. They try to escape the zombies, but there are too many of them, and Oldie goes crazy. As they escape, Joey finds his girlfriend Babe, and they show us some horrible acting. Oldie adds to the experience by declaring he's being punished for his sins, but he gets taken away by the couple to safety. Now Jesse scares his sister with a surprise appearance, and gets scolded for sneaking out. Jesse says that he has found zombies, and they need to call the zombie-proof cops. However, his sister locks him in his room, while the repairman licks a cake the same way he wants to lick Jesse's sister. Meanwhile, Joey and the team reach the bully's parents and warn them against the zombies, even though Oldie is still acting crazy. Now Jesse starts a fake fire and makes his sister panic. He uses the distraction and runs away after his sister opens the door for him. He tries calling the army, but it's of no use as the call gets cut. There's no time to rest as Joey and the team try to run away from the zombies in the middle of the apocalypse. They get into a van, but end up hitting a zombie. The bully's dad checks up on the body, but the zombie ends up killing him in the process. The repairman sees this, and a chaotic sequence follows. It ends up with everyone heading back to Jesse's place, and then everyone gets into an argument over Joey's team hitting a person. They explain that the person they hit was a zombie, but then Joey gets dizzy because he had inhaled a zombie gas earlier. Oldie also realizes he has a zombie head in his bag. He shows the zombie head and strangely gets his finger bitten before he throws the head to the floor. The repairman fixes the zombie head, but it starts talking and causes further panic. Now Jesse gets attacked by a zombie, but he gets saved by the others. Everyone decides to look for a getaway car, while the repairman looks out for more zombies to fix. Jesse's home is suddenly overrun by zombies, and the repairman gets attacked by a zombie in a suit. Things don't look good for the repairman, but then the TV turns on and shows a smelly workout. The hormone noises seem to distract the nasty zombie, so the repairman makes his escape. Jesse's sister doesn't move as fast as she should, possibly because she's too heavy. So Jesse makes fun of her by saying the zombies won't eat her because she's greasy and has no brains. However, a zombie sneaks up behind the sister and is about to attack her. Luckily, the repairman shows up to flex his fixing skill and sticks the zombie to the wall. Now the bully turns into a zombie, and his mom goes out to check up on his dad, but sees his body getting eaten by zombies. She runs back inside and finds Zombie Bully, but she hugs him because she thinks he's still her son. That clearly isn't the case, as Zombie Bully munches on her brains. Jesse and the others finally reach a bald doctor named Baldy and ask for his car. But he acts like a lawyer and asks too many questions. So the repairman threatens Baldy and takes control of his car, but it doesn't start on time. Zombies start piling up on the team, but Baldy simply comments on how he knows one of the zombies. A tense sequence follows, but the team manages to make an escape through the garage. The danger isn't over, as Oldie feels sick and is about to puke. That's when it's revealed there's a zombie on top of the car. It attacks Oldie, so the window gets rolled up to chop his hand off. The zombie hand proceeds to attack Oldie, and is even smart enough to grab Baldy's Dragon Balls, rather than his hair, but it eventually gets thrown away. It shows us the finger, and then the team decides where to go. Jesse wants to go to the police, but the others say they should go to the hospital. Joey feels this situation has already happened before, because he saw the first episode on Daniel CC Movie Channel. Now, the team enters the hospital, and Baldy gets to work on Oldie and Joey, both of whom seem very ill due to their exposure to the zombie gas. Meanwhile, Jesse decides to go to the police station with his sister and the repairman. Baldy takes a look at the sick men and worries that this might be a form of cancer, which is bad news for Babe and Joey. Now Jesse and the team reach the police station, but can't find anyone there. That's when the sister has a blonde moment and signals to some zombies to come help them, thinking that these are normal people. The zombies charge at the team, and the car doesn't start, so it leads to a tense situation. Luckily, the repairman makes it work, and the team rushes to Jesse's grandpa's house. Here, everyone loads up on guns, and Jesse makes the choice of picking up a small gun for a big fight. The team goes back to the hospital, where Oldie and Joey are both halfway through their zombie transformation. The men are almost as good as dead now, so Baldy suggests bagging them up to stay safe. Meanwhile, Jesse goes downstairs and tries to radio for help, but finds a zombie instead. He hides for a bit, but gets caught, so he switches to cowboy mode and shoots the zombie without mercy. This is of no use, as the zombie survives the bullet and attacks Jesse. He's about to be eaten in his smelly part, but then his sister and the repairman come to the rescue. They shoot the zombie many times, but end up splitting it in two. The zombie survives the bullets and attacks Jesse again, but then he uses a gas pipe to melt its face off. The team escapes from the scene, but Babe decides to take Joey to safety. Despite being old, Oldie runs fast and follows the couple into Baldy's bald car, and they betray the others by driving away. Babe drives the car as fast as she can and reaches some soldiers. She asks for their help, but they say the town is down with a plague, so nobody can get out. Babe argues with them, but then Oldie becomes a zombie, but still old. He attacks one of the soldiers, but spares Babe, possibly because he's too old to like sexy girls. He gets shot down in a horrible fashion, but gets back up and scares the soldiers away. Babe also escapes from the zombie, so he feasts on his soldier victim. Now Jesse and the team drive an ambulance and attack some zombies. They kill one of them with an electric shock, but accidentally start the siren and attract other zombies. Now Joey becomes a zombie and attacks Babe, so she escapes the car and runs for her shitty life. She is attacked by another zombie who likes to kiss young girls, but she rips its mouth open and proceeds to go inside a chapel. Zombie Joey chases after her and says he wants her brains because it smells spicy. Babe tries to resist his zombie hormones, but it's of no use as he eats her brains, and she seems to enjoy it. Jesse and the team try to get out of town, but get attacked by the military, who don't want anyone to breach the perimeter. They try another location, so Jesse radios for help. A zombie tries to trick him into coming to the hospital, but despite being bald, Baldy can still use his brains and asks the zombie who the president is. The zombie cannot answer the question, so the team decides this is a trap and figure out another plan. They go collect some meat supplies and leave Jesse outside as a guard, while the army faces off against the zombie invasion. Despite their bullets and their weapons, the army loses to the zombies, who start driving their jeeps. The zombies come driving toward Jesse, and it leads to a chase scene. Luckily, he runs into his sister and the others, who have now collected brains as bait. The team now tricks the zombies into following them to an electrical facility and traps them outside, before going inside the facility. The repairman deactivates the power, and then he sets up an elaborate trap to electrocute the zombies. However, Zombie Bully uses his brains and climbs up the fence. He then opens the gate and allows the other zombies to break in. This causes panic, so everyone hides inside their truck, while Baldy is inside the electrical room, waiting for a signal to start the power. Unfortunately, the repairman forgets his walkie-talkie outside the truck. With no means of contacting Baldy, the team decides to use Jesse's tiny size and make him crawl out of an open slot and into the driver's seat. After a lengthy struggle, Jesse starts the truck and rides into the facility, but also knocks down Zombie Bully. This isn't enough to kill him, so Jesse gets into another battle with him and comes out on top by stabbing his mouth. Later, Jesse enters the electrical room and turns on the power, which causes all the zombies to get shocked to death. The sister celebrates this victory by tongue massaging the repairman, who can finally have time to fix her bad hormones. However, Zombie Bully is still alive, and he attacks Jesse. Luckily, Baldy shows up and uses his bald head to distract Zombie Bully. This allows Jesse to kick him into an electrical circuit that fries him to death, ending his bully life. With the zombie apocalypse over, the army shows up to clean the mess, and the survivors walk away, happy to be alive. The movie ends with the zombie head from before getting burned down by a soldier, after which it admits defeat. Return of the Living Dead, Part 3. Spoiler ahead, watch out and take care. The movie begins at a military base, where an older colonel named Reynolds meets with his fellow colonel and a female officer named Sinclair. In a few moments, a top-secret experiment involving the reanimation of the dead will be commencing. Sinclair is proposing a very invasive method of binding the reanimated corpses to exoskeletons in order to better control them, but Reynolds is adamant that they use a humane approach of paralyzing them with chemicals instead. A cart is wheeled by another soldier. On top of the cart is a body covered in a white sheet. The group is about to enter the laboratory, but Reynolds can't find his key card, so they use the soldier's key card instead. In a nearby hangout spot, Reynolds' son named Kurt proudly shows his girlfriend Julie his father's key card that he stole that morning. Both Julie and Kurt are teenage rebels with a streak of fearlessness. In their latest escapade, they plan to sneak into the base to watch the secret experiment. Kurt had overheard his father on the phone talking about the big experiment, so he knows what time and where it will be held. Julie and Kurt successfully enter the base because Kurt uses his identity as the colonel's son. They pick a spot overlooking the laboratory where the experiment will be held. Below them are several military officials and scientists behind a glass window. In the center of the room is a male corpse bound by restraints. They release trioxin gas, which is able to bring back the dead to reanimate the corpse. Trioxin gas was originally concocted by Darrow Chemical, and now the military is interested in how it can be used to create lethal bioweapons. After a few moments, the man comes back to life as a rageful zombie, and he begins to struggle with his restraints. The other people in the room watch in awe. The military officers are already drawing up plans to deploy zombies in battle. The head scientist is congratulated for finally perfecting the project. The scientists then use Reynolds' preferred method of injecting a paralytic to subdue the zombie. It is injected into his forehead and completely paralyzes the zombie. However, it wears off very quickly. The zombie wakes up and thrashes around. The scientists try to restrain him, but he manages to bite a scientist's fingers off and bash his head against the wall. The scientist transforms into a zombie as well and bites a nearby technician to give him a free teeth massage. Chaos ensues, but eventually the soldiers contain the threat by neutralizing the infected. However, the military officers order that everyone exposed to the zombie be contained as well. Julie and Kurt go back to his house. They discuss the horrific events that unfolded during the experiment. Kurt declares that he doesn't need his father and only needs Julie, who can share her hormones with him. The two of them share a passionate tongue massage. Hours later, Reynolds finds them in his room, and he sternly tells his son that they need to talk. Kurt leaves Julie in the bedroom and steps inside his father's office. Reynolds tells him that he's being relocated to another assignment in a new city. Because of the ineffectiveness of his chosen method to subdue the zombie, Reynolds lost his position as the head of the project. Instead, Sinclair will take over with her more aggressive approach. Kurt refuses to leave because of his girlfriend. He storms off in the middle of their conversation. Kurt returns to the bedroom and announces to Julie that he's moving out on his own and taking her with him. After saying some hurtful words to his father, he and Julie leave the house. The couple is excited to leave their parents behind and start their own exciting lives. While on the road, Julie distracts Kurt by touching him. This causes him to lose control of the Tesla motorcycle. Julie is thrown off the motorcycle, and her body hits a telephone pole. The incident kills her immediately. Kurt holds her broken body and grieves the woman that he loves. In his grief, Kurt decides to take Julie's body to the base. He doesn't want to lose her, so he's willing to use the military experiment to reanimate her body. He uses his dad's security card again and sneaks into the base while carrying Julie's dead body. He grabs a hazmat suit and places her body in the middle of the room, just like he saw the scientists do earlier that day. Kurt struggles to pry open the can of trioxin gas. The gray fog envelops the room, and Julie's body slowly starts twitching. With a gasp for air, Julie comes back to life and kisses Kurt, but she doesn't remember the accident or death. While on the way out of the laboratory, they encounter a grotesque and hulking zombie man. They barely make their way out. The military obtains security footage of everything that happened on the base. Reynolds is summoned back to base, and he learns of what his son did. A female scientist explains that for now, Julie is not feeling the ravenous zombie hunger yet because of her hormone feelings for Kurt. But eventually, she will not be able to control herself, and she will attack him. Sinclair is eager to take over the project, but the fellow colonel decides that for now, Reynolds is still in charge. Julie begins to feel very hungry. She forces Kurt to stop at a convenience store, where she hungrily eats a lot of the products on display. A bully gang of 4 members makes fun of her, and Kurt insults them. This angers the gang, and they almost attack Kurt, if not for the attendant defusing the situation. The attendant pulls out a gun and forces the gang members to leave, but the gang retaliates and causes the attendant to be shot. As a gang bully passes by Julie, she bites him on the arm. This results in unrest in the area. Kurt and Julie flee in a van with the injured attendant inside. The military is alerted to Kurt and Julie's location. They set out to chase the young couple. Meanwhile, a police car is pursuing the van. The attendant stands up and screams in a chicken voice at the police officer not to shoot them. But the officer still shoots, and he crumples to the ground dead. Julie is attracted to the scent of his blood and flesh. She approaches the corpse and starts eating the attendant's brain. Kurt sees her and tries to stop her. The two escape into the nearby sewers. To distract her from the hunger, Julie grabs a metal ring and stabs her arm. The pain allows her to momentarily not be overcome by the urge to feed. She blames Kurt for turning her into a zombie, and he calls her disgusting, so she runs away from him. Kurt finds her holding onto the side of the bridge and about to attempt suicide. He promises to return her to her normal state, but she knows that she can never go back to being human. Julie lets go and dive into the river. Kurt screams and hurriedly runs after her. He walks along the riverbank and tries to spot her body. He doesn't notice that a vagrant named Riverman has been watching them. Meanwhile, the gang members are still chasing Kurt and Julie. However, the gang bully, the one bitten by Julie, is now showing symptoms of the infection. The gang leader decides that they will continue to chase after Kurt and Julie to make them pay for what they've done. Riverman approaches Kurt, and they find Julie washed up on the riverbank. She's still alive despite jumping because of the virus in her system. However, the gang arrives and threatens to kill them. Riverman tells the couple that he knows where they can hide. The military is still scrambling to find Kurt. You find out that Kurt and Julie will be using the storm drain to escape. However, Sinclair arrives and announces that she has been permitted to take over the project earlier. She is now in charge and tells the officer that there will be no special consideration given to Kurt, even if he is Reynolds' son. Reynolds reacts harshly and decides that even if he is no longer a part of the project, he will still fight for his son to be safe. Riverman takes them to his lair deep inside the sewers. He gives Kurt a coin and makes him swear that someday he will also do a good thing for somebody else. Kurt agrees. The girl bully tries to tell gang leader that their fellow's condition is worsening and they should be taking him to the hospital. But gang leader is hellbent on chasing Julie, so he orders the gang to go deeper into the sewers. Julie is freaking out about the future. Kurt assures her that they will still make it to Seattle and he will be a famous drummer. But she starts convulsing and is overtaken by her hunger pangs. She claims that she doesn't feel like a human anymore, and all she can feel is her hunger. Kurt momentarily comforts her using words, but not his muscles, and they fall asleep together. The military arrives at the entrance of the sewers and begins their pursuit. While Kurt is still asleep, Julie adorns her body with various metal chains and spikes, piercing her flesh so she can distract herself from her hunger. Gang leader finds the sleeping Riverman and demands that he tell him where Julie is. He dunks Riverman's head repeatedly in the sewer, but he refuses to tell them the location. Kurt couldn't resist hearing Riverman being hurt, and he runs out of the hiding place. He tries to fight gang leader, but he overpowers him. Moments later, Julie emerges from the lair. She looks terrifying, with all the metal spikes piercing her body parts. Gang leader approaches her and taunts her by saying lascivious things about her body, but he underestimates Julie, and she kills him without mercy. She then drags his dead body closer to the other gang members. Another bully tries to shoot at her, but the bullets do not do anything to her. She ends up killing him as well, and even taking a bite off his smelly face. Kurt tries to stop Julie, but she easily shakes him off. She chases the girl bully, who is about to climb up a ladder. She claws the skin of the girl's leg. The girl is finished off by her gang fellow, who is now infected. Riverman and Kurt hide behind a steel door with Julie. They barricade it with wooden planks. Riverman is horrified by the violence of Julie, but he still agrees to help Kurt. Meanwhile, Julie is losing herself because the pain is fading and the hunger is growing stronger. Gang leader and the girl bully are also reanimated as zombies, and the zombie gang members all try to break down the steel door. Julie begs Kurt to tie her up so she won't hurt him, but before he can do so, gang leader's head peeks through the door. Riverman decapitates his head. However, the other gang member has now broken through the door. Kurt stays behind to hold them back, and he begs Riverman to take Julie to safety. He bashes them with a metal pipe, but soon enough, the zombies break through the wooden planks they put up. Kurt escapes by running and hiding from them in the hallways. But when he gets to the hidden escape route, he discovers that Julie has betrayed Riverman and killed him. She is now feeding on his flesh and is fully a ravenous zombie. Kurt is shocked when he sees what Julie has now turned into. At that moment, the military arrives. They neutralize all the other zombies, including Julie. Reynolds insists that his son be separated from Julie. Kurt cooperates with the military and tells them the whole story. Reynolds sits down with him and admits that ever since his mother died, he has neglected to spend time with Kurt. He now intends to get to know his son more, but Kurt is concerned about his girlfriend. Reynolds explains that she will now be used in military projects. Kurt explores the hallways of the base. He discovers that Julie and Riverman, who is now a zombie, are both being kept in rooms and tortured under orders by Sinclair. He's now strapped into an exoskeleton that controls his every move. They will be deployed soon as bioweapons. Kurt is horrified by their treatment of Julie. He breaks into the cell where she's kept and frees her. Riverman also breaks free and starts a commotion. He attacks Sinclair and another scientist. Riverman knocks over a giant vat and releases another one of the creatures the military experimented on. One by one, more and more creatures are released. Sinclair tries to fight back by grabbing a gun, but eventually, one of the creatures grabs her by the neck. Kurt and Julie run through the hallways. A lockdown is triggered on the base, and Reynolds scrambles to find his son. The lockdown commences, and they are now trapped inside. Reynolds begs Kurt to come out and leave with him, but it's revealed that Kurt was bitten earlier, and he is now infected. It is too late for him, and he knows in his heart that he belongs with Julie. Kurt and Julie get to a furnace. The tragic lovers decide to immolate themselves, rather than be turned into heartless monsters for bioweapons. But what matters most to them is that they are together where they belong. The movie ends with the flames engulfing Kurt and Julie. Return of the Living Dead, Part 4 and 5. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. 10 years later, after the occurrence of the trioxide leak incident, everyone had forgotten about the trioxide gas. The head of Hypertech, Charles, accidentally discovered that 6 barrels of trioxide remained undestroyed at an abandoned military base overseas. These were intentionally left behind at the time. Upon learning this information, Charles rushed abroad to buy them from the person in charge and bring them back for experimentation. Unexpectedly, due to the passage of time, one of the barrels had leaked, infecting one of the men with the virus and killing the person in charge on the spot. Charles pulled out his gun, killed them without mercy, and then brought several barrels of trioxide back to the United States for experiment. The scene shifts to a high school student named Julian who loves off-road motorcycling. Both his parents had died in a car accident, leaving him and his younger brother to rely on each other. They were raised by their uncle Charles, who was also the head of Hypertech. One day, Julian and his classmates went to a stunt field to practice their bike skills. Unexpectedly, his friend Zeke had an accident while attempting to jump over an obstacle, causing him to flip his bike and fall into a coma from a severe head injury. Everyone rushed him to the hospital for treatment. Meanwhile, Charles's Living Dead experiment had made significant progress. The main component of the trioxide was a gene revival catalyst, which could reanimate corpses into the living dead. However, the reanimated corpses would become bloodthirsty, biting anyone they saw. Charles's mission was to find a way to control the living dead and turn them into biochemical soldiers for the battlefield. Little did he know that during the experimentation process, the trioxide leaked out through the pipelines and infected 2 employees working in the underground tunnel, turning them into the living dead. On the other side, Julian went to the hospital to visit Zeke, only to be informed by the hospital that Zeke had died upon arrival. Heartbroken by the news, Julian received a call from his classmate Katie, who worked as a security guard at Hypertech. She claimed that she had just seen Zeke being brought into the company. Suspicious of the situation, Julian gathered his friends to investigate. After their hacker friend infiltrated the company's internal website, they indeed found Zeke's name listed, stating he had been taken to a laboratory. Since the company owned the hospital's ambulance, they could easily steal patients. At this point, the group began to suspect that Hybridtech might be conducting horrifying human experiments. After some discussion, the group decided to sneak in and rescue Zeke. With Katie's help, they obtained fake access cards, and their friend provided them with the building's blueprint. They decided to sneak in through the underground tunnel. Once everything was ready, they set off on their Tesla motorcycles that night. Unexpectedly, they encountered the two mutated employees halfway there. However, the group did not know what had happened to them. Their hairy companion named Harry pulled out his gun and warned the two not to approach, but to no avail. In a moment of crisis, Harry fired 2 shots at them, but they continued to advance towards Julian and the others, screaming about wanting to eat brains. The group was terrified and only then realized that the 2 employees had become living dead. In desperation, Harry fired another shot at one of the living dead's head, finally knocking them down. Harry then killed the other living dead and continued towards Hybridtech Company. Meanwhile, Katie was closely monitoring the company's movements from the surveillance. Soon, Julian's voice came through the walkie-talkie, saying they had reached the back door. Under Katie's guidance, they headed to the lab. The group passed through a dark tunnel, and from the lab below, they could hear eerie wails that frightened them. Still, they pressed on to save their friend. To their surprise, they encountered Julian's brother along the way. It turned out that the brother had eavesdropped on Julian's plan out of curiosity and followed them. With no other choice, Julian took his brother along. Before long, they reached the end of the tunnel and found a weapon storage instead of the lab. It was clear that Katie's directions were off. Worse still, the signal was blocked in this area, so Julian and Katie lost contact. As the group was at a loss for what to do, Charles suddenly appeared. Julian and the others realized they had entered Hybridtech's first-level laboratory. Harry pulled out his gun and threatened Charles to hand over Zeke. Julian intervened, telling Harry to put down the gun, and then tried to persuade his uncle that they only wanted to take their friend and leave. Seeing this, Charles reluctantly led the group to find Zeke. Along the way, they passed numerous rooms holding the living dead and felt shocked by that. Finally, in a cell, they found an awakened Zeke. Charles did not have the unlock code, so Harry simply shot the lock, freeing Zeke. The gunshot triggered the alarm system, and Katie in the monitoring room noticed this, trying to enter the password to shut off the alarm. On the other hand, as Julian and the others were leaving, they accidentally stumbled upon a nursery filled with zombie fetuses. This confirmed that Hybridtech was indeed conducting terrifying experiments. At this point, Harry forced Charles to reveal the truth at gunpoint. It turned out that Hybridtech had been helping the military develop biochemical soldiers using trioxide, which required them to source corpses from nearby hospitals for their resurrection experiments. Charles then revealed that after Julian's parents' death, they were also turned into biochemical soldiers and kept in the adjacent weapons department. While they were talking, the zombies in the Petri dishes suddenly became agitated, grabbing everyone's attention. Charles seized the opportunity to escape the lab quickly. Meanwhile, Katie accidentally pressed the wrong button while trying to disable the alarm, opening the cells holding the living dead. All the zombies rushed out, attacking the living. Julian and his companions were also attacked and had to make their way to the elevator to escape. During this process, the injured Zeke was bitten by one of the living dead. Subsequently, the group took the elevator back to the room they had been in earlier. After arming themselves, they planned to return the way they had come through the tunnel. Unexpectedly, the living dead broke the tunnel halfway through, separating the group. Zeke, Julian's brother, and a schoolgirl ran to the parking lot to find a car, while Julian and the other two were trapped in the lab. Julian wanted to check on his parents, so the 3 of them fought their way through the lab with guns, reaching the weapons department hall. They faced the living dead blocking their path, and quickly ended the battle with a burst of gunfire. However, while running towards the elevator, Harry was killed by a suddenly appearing zombie. The remaining 2, without time to grieve, took the elevator upstairs. They successfully found Julian's parents, but they had already been turned into biochemical soldiers. Since a password was needed to awaken them, Julian had no choice but to leave with his friend. Soon after they left, Charles appeared in the lab, releasing Julian's parents. By the time Julian and his friend barely managed to escape outside, they were surrounded by the living dead. At the critical moment, Katie arrived in a car and rescued the 2. Meanwhile, during Julian's brother's escape in the car, Zeke began to mutate and tried to eat the schoolgirl. In a panic, the car crashed into the roadside and exploded, knocking all 3 passengers unconscious. When they woke up, Julian's brother had already been killed by Zeke, who had eaten his brain. Schoolgirl quickly picked up a flamethrower and chased Zeke away. However, more living dead soon surrounded her. Luckily, Katie arrived in her car to save Schoolgirl. But as they were preparing to escape through the company's front gate, Julian's zombified father blocked their way. Holding a Gatling gun, he wrecked their car. Schoolgirl got out of the car, threw a grenade at him, and blew him to meet the zombie lord. The group continued their escape, only to encounter a scorched Zeke and the resurrected mother of Julian. A battle ensued between the two sides. Julian grappled with Zeke, while the others dealt with the biochemical soldiers. Zeke, now living dead, had become much more powerful and beat Julian badly. Seeing that he was no match for Zeke, Julian seized an opportunity to place a grenade on Zeke's body. As the explosion sounded, Zeke met his end. Schoolgirl led Julian's zombified mother to a nearby power distribution box and used the high-voltage electricity to end the battle. In the end, agents from the National Security Agency arrived to clean up the scene. Julian and his companions were fortunate to survive the disaster. However, Charles, the person in charge of Hybratech, secretly smuggled several barrels of trioxide out of the company building. That night, he brought a barrel of trioxide to a villa in the suburbs, intending to sell it to a foreign gang leader. The buyer insisted on seeing whether the trioxide could truly resurrect the dead. Reluctantly, Charles conducted an experiment using several corpses. However, an accident occurred during the process, and Charles was bitten by a living dead. The gang members shot the living dead and quickly fled away like scared chickens. The scene shifts, and a long time has passed since the living dead outbreak at Hybratech. Julian, who had escaped from the ordeal, has since forgotten about the incident. Back at school, he found his sexy girlfriend named Jenny, and the two were extremely happy together. One day, Julian received the tragic news that his uncle Charles had been murdered, and he was devastated. That afternoon, he and Jenny went to his uncle's house to sort through his belongings, only to discover a hidden compartment in the attic containing 2 barrels of trioxide. Neither of them knew what was inside the barrels, but they noticed the words "military supplies" engraved on the surface. Curious, they decided to transport one of the barrels to a lab to have their classmate, Cody, examine it. That evening, Julian found Cody at a party where he was working on a new type of hallucinogen to sell. When Cody learned about Julian's request, he immediately donned a lab coat and went to the lab. After a series of tests, he found that the liquid in the barrel had a composition similar to the stimulant he had been working on, but he couldn't identify it specifically. Upon hearing that it was a stimulant, their friend Jeremy became excited and, despite everyone's objections, tasted a bit of the liquid. Soon after, Jeremy began to act wildly and uncontrollably, which frightened everyone. Fortunately, he returned to normal shortly after and excitedly described the explosive euphoria he had experienced. Fearing trouble, Julian and Jenny considered calling the police, but after listening to Jeremy's account, Cody had other ideas. He wanted to use the liquid in the barrel to create stimulants to sell for profit. As it turned out, Jeremy shared the same idea. So Cody lied about needing to conduct further tests, successfully getting rid of Julian. Then, he and Jeremy began working diligently to create the stimulants. Meanwhile, the gangsters, John and his fellow, who had initially fled, received orders from their boss to retrieve the trioxide at all costs. So they disguised themselves as Interpol agents and went to Charles's house to search for any remaining barrels. That night, they secretly entered the house and found a barrel of trioxide in the attic, but traces on the floor suggested there should be another one. Determined to recover all the barrels, John began searching the surrounding area. At the same time, Jeremy and his friends had already started selling the stimulants they had made on campus. Business was booming, and their supply quickly sold out. When Julian found out, he and Jenny went to the lab and had a big argument with Cody, pushing the barrel out in the process. Jenny then suggested they take the barrel to her lab to personally test it for toxicity. Julian agreed, and Jenny went to the lab to extract the liquid from the barrel and inject it into a lab rat's food, waiting to see the effects. Meanwhile, chaos erupted on campus. 3 reckless youths who had bought the stimulants went home, and 2 of them swallowed 3 pills each to enhance the effects. This immediately triggered a mutation, turning them into living dead who tried to eat their friend's brain. Terrified, the friend ran away, with the living dead in hot pursuit. Along the way, he encountered a girl who was out on a date and urged her to run. Unfortunately, she was completely baffled by the situation. Just then, her boyfriend arrived in his car, and she hurriedly got in. In the split second before the door closed, one of the living dead scratched her back. Assuming the 2 living dead were merely drug addicts, she didn't pay much attention and told her boyfriend to drive away quickly. Meanwhile, the guy ran into the school's band while they were rehearsing. He explained the situation to them, but no one believed him. Just as they were talking, the living dead caught up with them and killed the guitarist. At that point, the drummer believed his story and used his drumsticks to stab one of the zombies in the head, killing him. The guy picked up the guitar and took out the other one. The immediate danger was averted, but the infected girl mutated while arguing with her boyfriend and bit him, turning them both into living dead. The next day, the killings at the school caught the attention of John and his fellow. Upon discovering that the victims were all living dead, they launched an investigation at the school and eventually found Julian, Charles's nephew. Julian realized what they were looking for, but didn't dare tell the truth, claiming he didn't know anything. However, his odd behavior still aroused suspicion, and John and his men began to secretly tail him. On the other hand, Jenny and the lab assistant went to the lab to check on the situation, only to find that the lab rat had become extremely aggressive. The assistant tried to calm it down, but was bitten. Jenny thought the rat was just excited and didn't pay much attention, leaving the lab to get something. Curious about the barrel's contents, he tried to enter the password to unlock it. However, his bitten hand began to swell and secrete pus. Alarmed, the assistant rushed out to find a doctor. Just as he left, the barrel's lock mysteriously opened and the living dead inside crawled out, setting off a silent crisis. Jenny quickly returned to the lab, only to see the open barrel. She called Julian to inform him, but he was busy setting up a party with Cody and couldn't deal with the barrel issue. At that moment, the infected girl and her boyfriend arrived, biting anyone they saw. Believing the two had gone mad, the group tied them up and sent 2 male students to take them to the hospital. However, on the way, the living dead broke free and bit both students. Fortunately, John and his fellow had been following them and used a rocket launcher to blow up the car, sending them straight to meet Jesus. Realizing that the trioxide must be hidden in the school, they hurried back. On the other hand, the assistant had also mutated into a living dead, attacking the living in a frenzy. The infection spread rapidly, and soon the entire campus was overrun with the zombies. Realizing the severity of the situation, Julian and Cody rushed to the lab to meet up with Julia. On their way, they were attacked by 3 living dead and managed to kill them after a fierce struggle. Just as they were about to flee, the living dead from the barrel appeared, yelling about eating brains. At that critical moment, John and his men arrived and shot the living dead. John then went to the lab to take the barrel away and informed the others of the dangers of the trioxide. It was only then that Cody realized the trouble he had caused. He suddenly remembered that he had given some of the stimulants to Jeremy, who planned to sell them at a party that night. Upon hearing this, John drove them to the party, not to save people, but to retrieve the stimulants. Upon arriving at the scene, John took several guns from the trunk and handed them to Julian and the others for self-defense. They then entered the party to search for Jeremy, only to find that 1/3 of the people there had already turned into living dead, including Jeremy himself. Panicked partygoers tried to flee in the chaos, and Cody got separated from the group, accidentally getting bitten by a living dead. As he was about to mutate, John nearby saw the situation and stepped in, killing Cody. With the increasing number of the zombies, the situation was getting out of control. John and his fellow decided to retreat, but found themselves trapped due to the overwhelming number of living dead. In the end, they had to call the military for help. Meanwhile, Jenny and Julian encountered Jeremy while fleeing. Julian tried to shoot, but he had run out of bullets during the earlier fight. With no other choice, he engaged in bare muscle wrestling with the mutated Jeremy, who had become incredibly strong. Julian was no match for him and was soon pinned down. In the nick of time, Jenny pulled out a handgun and shot Jeremy, killing him. The two then continued their escape. Not long after, a military helicopter flew in from a distance. They didn't care whether the people below were alive or dead and began firing indiscriminately. This was followed by the launch of several missiles, turning the scene into ruins. In the end, Julian, Jenny, and John managed to hide in a house and escape the carnage. When they emerged, they saw that the party scene was a complete mess, with not a single survivor left. This Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.